$400. Now, I'm predicting between 400 and 300 for the next Switch console. I think 300 to 350 will make sense. 400 with like taxes and tariffs and all that other shit added on. But I think it's really going to be 300 base price. The original Switch launched at, where's the quote? We are aware that inflation is currently rising and that the exchange rate environment has changed significantly since the launch of the Nintendo Switch in 2017. Nintendo President Fujiwara told investors in the company's third quarter earnings call this week, according to a translation by Nintendo Everything. We also need to consider the affordable prices that customers expect from Nintendo products. Yeah, because just in case you didn't know, one of the things that make Nintendo successful is the fact that they understand that like one of the main things that factor into people's purchasing decision, no matter what, is how much something costs. So when you have something that is a luxury item that costs a lot, it makes it harder for a lot more people to get it. Because remember, most people are on a budget. Most people don't have excess amounts of money to spend on recreational stuff like video games. And then on top of that, like for the adults that can't buy it, you gotta also remember on the flip side that a lot of kids don't have money or the ability to save up money to buy it themselves, so they gotta convince their parents to buy it. And the more it costs, the harder it is for them to convince their parents to buy it. They're making it more so that it's harder for that purchase to go through on that end. So always keep that in mind. And another thing, like even down to the philosophy of how Nintendo makes their games and makes their consoles, like Nintendo doesn't care if their games run at 30 frames max, because as long as the game has interesting gameplay ideas, there's a whole group of people called Nintendo fans that are gonna play it and be rabid about it and love it and defend it with their whole life until they fucking die. So I really think that is like something that is another reason why, like I said, Nintendo is a successful company and why they've been around for so long. They understand what their consumer wants. Their consumer, like I said, like a lot of these consoles like the PlayStation and Xbox, a lot of these consoles try and sell you on the fact that, oh, we give you the premium experience, we give you 60 frames, we give you 4K and blah 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 blah. But it's like, bro, most people don't know what the fuck 4K actually looks like. Like most people know generally, like, yeah, 4K is really clear and it looks crispy and cool. But if you show them a 1080 image with a high bit rate and a 4K image with a low bit rate, they wouldn't be able to tell which one is 4K and which one is 1080, let alone know what the fuck a bit rate is to want to watch it or not want to watch it. So it's like, bro, you gotta keep in mind when it comes to stuff like this, the average person, they just want something that's fun. They don't think about 30 frames, 60 frames when it comes to fun. They think of fun as in, I'm enjoying myself, or, man, this shit ass, let me do something else. They don't give a fuck if this shit runs 4K. They don't give a shit if it runs at 60 frames per second. They don't give a shit about none of that. They just give a shit that it runs, period. Nintendo President Fujiwara, blah blah blah. We also need to consider the affordable prices that customers expect for Nintendo products. When considering the price of our products, we believe that it is necessary to consider these factors from multiple angles. At this time, we cannot announce a specific price of the Nintendo Switch 2, but we are considering it taking into account various points. Another thing I think y'all also need to keep in mind is that typically these companies, like I said earlier when I was talking about Nintendo, they are a software first company. They sell you on the software and then they go from there. Because once you buy the Nintendo Switch, what is the purpose of a Nintendo Switch? To play games. So once you buy the Nintendo Switch, you're gonna want games to play on the Nintendo Switch. They make their money by selling you games over the years versus you buying the Switch. Because it might take, let's say the Switch comes out at $400, just so you understand. It might take about $500 to make every Switch, or $450, whatever, $500 to make a single Switch. But they might sell it to you for $400. Why? because they want you to buy games for the Switch over the next 5 years. And over the next 5 years, you might buy $500 worth of games, in-game games like microtransactions, DLC, all that. That's where they make their money, on the back end of you buying games because you have this console. There will certainly be pressure to price the Switch 2 higher than its predecessor, especially because Nintendo traditionally tries to make profit off of its hardware rather than selling it under market value as a loss leader for selling software. Yeah, that's true. They don't typically have to sell at a loss because they sell weak, because they start off their consoles usually typically with like weaker hardware on the front end, because like I said, most people won't notice that games are running at 30 frames. Most people won't notice their game has anti-aliasing. Most people will just notice, I'm having fun! This shit is ass. At the same time, Fukuwara's remarks suggest that despite the wild popularity of the original Switch, Nintendo knows it's risking pricing itself into irrelevance if it aims too high. Yeah, that's another thing. I already explained it earlier with the higher the price is, the harder it is for adults to justify, and the higher the price is, the harder it is for a kid to get it by buying it so that they can play it. Especially when the Nintendo Switch boxes are going to be sitting 2 feet away, and parents are going to go, well, it's the same thing, but this one costs less, so you're getting that one. What will the Switch 2 actually cost? You don't fucking know. Where's the quotes? While some think Nintendo could charge as much as $500, many are banking on it. $400. I'll say $400 is a fair price for it. $400 is a fair price for it, because the last one was like let me see. I really gotta get better at typing. You know what? That's what I'm gonna start practicing. Every morning I'm gonna practice typing. Okay, it's 20. Okay, so it was that's Australian dollars. Oh, $290. So $300. It was $300. I remember for mine, I paid like $350 something. I brought Smash with it too, because you know that's one of the few games that I do actually play on my Switch. I paid like five. I paid like 3 something for it. 4 something for it. So yeah. So let's see. See how much that is in today's money. In 2017. In 20s. 200 in 2025. So yeah, about 400, and they would actually be able to profit. Same thing. So yeah, making about an equivalent console is 400 sounds about right. So expect that shit to be $399. Maybe if they maybe want to cut corners and really try and sell people on it, $350. But Nintendo, they like nice and whole numbers, so I think it's gonna be $399. This is a sweet spot. Early adopters won't be price sensitive. That's a fact. Because early adopters are usually people who are game enthusiasts, and then over time, after those early adopters get it, you can just drop the price and you'll be fine. Like people who are waiting for the price to drop, they'll either buy then or they'll wait it to drop more into their price range. And prices can always be lowered. Matt said, yeah, look at the 3DS. When the 3DS initially came out, people was like, this shit costs way too much. They dropped the price by half when it was too late, but he dropped that price by a significant amount and more. People started buying. Of course, people will want it to be lower than whatever it is, and it will be announced that. That's true. Like I said, people who are enthusiasts, as dude said earlier, don't give a fuck how much it costs. They're gonna spend that goddamn bread. But people who just want it, whether it's for their kids or they just want it for a couple games like Smash or Luigi's Mansion or some shit like that, they're gonna wait. They're gonna wait. They have no problem waiting. What does history tell us Nintendo will do? Polygon assembled a chart of inflation-adjusted prices for all the company's consoles. Starting with the launch of the N64, the price has mostly hung around $350 to $400. That seems like the minimum price this time around, considering the Switch OLED itself is $350, while the Switch 2 is rumored to have a cheaper LCD screen. Oh lord. It's time to hear Nintendo niggas to complain. Its other features, including the Joy-Con mouse-like functionality, are a lot beefier this time around. Polygon also that's getting into the more nerdy shit of the data. So yeah, you're wondering how much or what price to expect the Switch to be? The answer is right here. About 400, maybe 450. I don't think 450, because after 450, now you're competing with the PlayStation's 5 pricing, and being that the PlayStation 5 has been out for a while, it's around 400, so it's about the same price as a Switch. So I don't think that's worth it. New Steam feature warns you before you buy a band again. Not gonna lie, thought I was gonna give a fuck about that, but I don't. But something I do give a fuck about is how Suicide Squad is dropping a surprise update after the game fucking day. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand what it is with games waiting until they fucking die to drop updates and add things that people were asking for from the fucking jump. But that's what we're doing. That's where we are. Here we are. Let's go. Let's read about it. How is this gonna be the update? Wait, is this gonna be the update that brings the game back? Criticized for its live service approach as well as its lackluster story, Suicide Squad is a game that never quite got its feet on the ground. Yeah, story was ass, and like the parts of the story that weren't ass were all in the beginning, and they last like 2 seconds. Initial sales for the game came in way under expectations. The sales for this game was so fucking ass. I own 2 copies of this game. The PlayStation version of this game and the PC version on the Epic Game Store. You know how I got both of those games? For fucking free. You know how long ago this game came out? Less than a full year ago. So this game came out, and in less than a year, I got the game for free twice. Well, technically, I pay for PlayStation Plus, and that's a PlayStation Plus perk, so I'm technically not getting it for free, but I'm basically getting the shit for free twice. Fucking crazy. Anyway, initial sales for it came way in under expectations, something that would eventually cause problems for Rocksteady as well as the game's publisher, were greedy bitch ass niggas. These poor sales numbers resulted in layoffs as well as cut content. Though Rocksteady is still giving Suicide Squad some attention for some fucking reason, surprise dropping the game's most recent update at the start of Black History Month. I don't know why they did that shit. Development on it was brought to an end in January of this year, giving players a send-off that has already become quite diverse. However, that was expected to be the final update for the game. Wasn't its last one after all. A mysterious new patch releasing for the shit came out this week and has brought the game up to version 1.24. And while patch notes have not yet been made available, previous updates have included bug fixes and content overhauls, sparking discussion over what may be in store for the game. What was in the update? The game's most recent patch prior to this newest one fixed a number of bugs, blah 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 blah. What did they add? Did they add any content? Into the final conclusion of the story, alongside with several other developments, addressed this controversial plot, which revolved around blah 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 blah. That's just you explaining it. Okay. They dropped a fucking hotfix. Nothing burger ass. Something that won't be a nothing burger ass article that I'm sure about is the UK government rejecting a call to prohibit disabling live service games. The reason why I say, to me, this topic at least is pretty important is for the simple fact that when it comes to keeping a lot of these tech companies in check, one of the few governments or a few set of governments that are really good at doing that is like the EU, UK. They're the reason why iPhones don't have those dumbass lightning port chargers on the bottom, and now they have C cables, because they literally said, hey, you don't have to go change out all the ports on the old iPhones and no crazy shit like that. But from this day forward, when we release this law, every new future line of iPhones you release better have a motherfucking a USB-C type port on the bottom of that bitch, or we're going to find the fuck out of you and your phones will be banned in the EU. And the EU is not just UK. That's UK, Ireland, fucking Latveria, whichever the fuck one it is. That country with Dr. Doom as the goddamn king of the country. So like, being banned from selling phones in all of Europe, fucking Italy, France, the Vatican, all that European shit, they won't be able to sell a phone nowhere over there if they do that. The EU and the UK government, all that whole area in general, fucking Portugal, all that shit in general, have been really forward thinking when it comes to laws that keep these companies in check. So whenever it comes to laws of this nature, I kind of pay attention. Even though, like I said, I try to stay away from politics. This directly affects games and gaming, so I pay attention to it. But while acknowledging the concerns expressed in the petition and said it would continue to monitor the situation, the government essentially suggested existing regulations offer sufficient consumer protection. One part I do want to say about this though is I'm kind of torn and conflicted about this, right? Because on one hand, if you take a live service game and add like AI robots and shit into it, like, it's not the same as when the game was alive and you were playing with other people. But on the other hand, even when you love a game so much that was an online primarily game, low key, when you love that game enough, you would be better, you would be like fine and okay with playing with bots every once in a while, just to, you know, go back and experience that game that you love so much real quick. It won't be the same, but it's better preservation wise than having nothing. I don't know, that's just the way I see it. But we are aware of issues relating to the lifespan of digital content, including video games, and we appreciate the concerns of players of some games that have been discontinued. Yeah. And it even sucks more in situations like The Crew and whatnot, where it isn't like a live service game like Fortnite or Roblox where the game is free to play. It's a situation where you have to pay a full $60 or whatever to play the game. For example, Overwatch fucking free to play update. I paid $40 for that game on a physical disc that now just downloads a whole different iteration free to play version of the game instead of the Overwatch 1 I brought and know and love. Reads the response from the Department of Culture. We have no plans to amend the existing consumer law on digital obsolescence, but we will monitor this issue and consider the relevant work of the Competition and Market Authority on consumer rights and consumer detriment. The response outlined a number of protection laws, blah, 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 blah. However, there is no requirement in UK law for software companies to support older versions of their products. Nigga, there should be, said the DCM, whatever the fuck. Decision making is for those companies taking account of commercial and regulatory factors and complying with existing consumer law. To play devil's advocate for a second, one thing I could see that a lot of these companies would be able to reasonably argue as to why they can't deal with upkeep of these old games to keep them alive forever is to keep these servers on and stuff like that. It costs a lot of money sometimes to keep these old ass games up. So it's not always very practical to keep these games up for the simple fact that if it's costing you more money to keep the game alive than to just take it out back and BOW! The game to old Yeller, take it out back and shoot that bitch in the back of the head and put it out of his misery, then business wise, you'd be a fucking idiot to not do that. On the other hand, yeah, it sucks as a person playing a game that just didn't get his chance in a heyday. A lot of people didn't really enjoy it. Yeah, it sucks to play a game like that's getting 2 to the back of the dome. 1 to do the job, 2 to make sure the job is done. But it's like, hey, bruh, at the end of the day, a lot of these game companies are businesses. They do this, they make games and stuff like that because they want to profit off of it. And if they make a game and they drop it and it's not profiting and their goal is to profit, can't get mad at them for shooting a game that nobody's playing in the back of his head top. There may be occasions where companies make decisions based on the high running costs of maintaining older servers for games with declining user base. Again, what I said, it costs more to keep the servers up than to take them bitches down. The CRA gives consumers important rights when they make a contract with a trader for the supply of digital content. Read a end of users license agreement every once in a while. Read it every once in a while. Read it every once in a while. Read it every once in a while. Because sometimes you will learn certain things that you wouldn't know otherwise. Like, for example, whenever you download a game and you don't buy a physical copy of it, you're licensing the game. I knew that a very, very long time ago because, for example, most people don't even realize this, but unless the game has like a specific co-op mode, it's illegal to lend people a copy of your game. So, I mean, it never happened because companies don't give a fuck that much. But legally speaking, if one of these companies wanted to, they could come to your door, open up, hand you a box of chocolates, say hold that 1 second, and walk off and like, you've been served. Oh shit, they gave me court papers under it. And they could serve you a fucking notification papers for a lawsuit and sue you for letting somebody use a copy of your game. You're just letting them borrow the disc so they could play it. Technically that's illegal and against end users license agreements. But most of you have never read the terms of service, so you wouldn't know shit like that. Not saying every time you come across the terms of service to read it, but every once in a while, you know, skim over it and see what the fuck you're really signing up to. You might learn something every once in a while. When they make a contract with the trader for the supply of digital content, requiring it to be of satisfactory quality, fit for a particular purpose, and as described by the seller. It may be difficult and expensive for businesses to maintain support for old software, particularly if it needs to interact with new technologies. Yeah. So one of the reasons why, for those of you who don't understand, one of the reasons why there's constantly new consoles coming out is because after a certain amount of time, it gets hard to run not only newer games on older technology, but older games on newer technology. Because as technology progresses and as quality of life features become more standardized, there's certain things that didn't exist in older games that now exist in newer games that you would just think to be there that weren't there. So like, for example, if you're playing an older game and you just want to hear the sound effects of the game, you don't want to hear the game's music, once you start going before 2000, once you start going to 99 and back, the chances of you finding a music slider in a game dive off a cliff. And even if you go to 2000 and up, I'll say until home consoles in every sense of the word became the majority of ways that people played games, and let's say about 2010 or after, a music slider in a game wasn't guaranteed. Closed captions in a game wasn't guaranteed. If you're playing a game on PC, VSync wasn't guaranteed. Borderless windowed wasn't guaranteed. And those are things that modern people who play video games would just expect to see in a game, but once you go back and play older games, like older versions of PC games, you start to realize some of this shit just literally can't run on newer hardware. Like, people who are fans of like old school Fallout, for example, there's a reason why they had to re-release those games. It wasn't because modern day computers couldn't run it, so they had to make a demake. No, modern computers couldn't run it because the software that's necessary for those to be run is not contained in modern day versions of Windows and Mac and all that. So it was really hard to run those games because the proper necessities and dependencies weren't on your computer. So you try to boot up the game, for those of you who not understanding all the technical shit I'm saying, there's older games that's 10, 20 years old where because your computer doesn't have the information it needs to run the game, it'll just crash on site, or it'll mess up, like audio will glitch, the game will run slow, you'll see screen tearing, a whole plethora of problems just because you're running the game on a computer that doesn't have the software capabilities of running it. Same thing when it comes to console. Some of the reason why some certain PS3 games have to be remade to be playable on PS5 is because some of the dependencies and some of the weird stuff that that developers had to do to get it to work on a PS3 won't make sense to a PS5's CPU. It may be difficult and expensive for businesses to maintain, blah blah blah. Ubisoft delisted the crew in late 2023. I talked about that a long time ago. I don't give enough fucks to explain that. In the statement issued to VGC at the time, it said that after almost a decade, that's 10 years, of support, it was necessary to dislabel the online-only game due to upcoming server infrastructure and licensing constraint. Oh yeah, that game did have a lot of licensing music. So, for those of you who don't understand what music licensing is and how fucking devious it is, the short version I'll give you is, like in this example, if you have a game that's 10 years old, that has music in it, and you bought a license to have this music in the game for 10 years, as soon as you hit 10 years in one day, if you haven't renewed the license so that you can use that song in the game for another 10 years, if you haven't renewed the license, that company can run down on you. And being that 9 times out of 10, they don't be dealing with like independent artists, they be dealing with like the Taylor Swifts and the Drakes of the industry, nigga, you're getting sued. You're getting sued. So yeah, that's one that I don't commonly think about, but yeah, that actually is pretty important. Even think about something like Fortnite, how sometimes they'll have skin packs and packs with song-based emotes in the game that'll just randomly disappear from out the game. Sometimes it's because they didn't want to pay for licensing to keep it there in the game for an extended period of time, because they know that, again, going back to the overarching theme of this conversation, it will cost more to keep it there than how much it'll make. And if you're paying $200 just to make $100, you're doing what us in the human industry like to call you're hustling backwards. Last year, September, Ubisoft acknowledged the customer complaints over its handling of the crew and announced plans to launch offline modes for the Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest. I think they should all do that, but the only reason why Ubisoft did this is because everybody was looking at them. Like, if nobody was looking at them behind this shit, they wouldn't have did this. They would have just said, fuck you, GG's. That same month, just 2 weeks after Concord's release, Sony announced plans to take the live service shooter offline, pull the game from sale, and offer refunds to all owners. And last week, Warner Bros. Confirmed that its 5th season of Oh, that reminds me of something. One second. What? 2. And last week, Warner Bros. Confirmed that the 5th season of Multiverses will be his last, beginning on blah 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 blah, and then the game will go offline and be delisted from online marketplaces, but it will still be playable offline. I'll put it like this. This is a reasonable take from the EU government. They're not speaking out. First off, the EU government definitely has people within that do their research. That's number one. Number two, this isn't the, I don't want to say this isn't the worst thing in the world, but this isn't unreasonable. Because like they said, they don't want to, because forcing a business to keep games that aren't bringing them profit alive could single-handedly cause a business to lose money and drown. Like, for example, I like Concord, but the majority of people who played Concord didn't really like it too tough and wouldn't have stuck with it for too long. If Sony was forced to keep that game up, they would just be losing money on that game. Multiverse is another great example. WB then came out and said, yo, this game cost us $100 million. No, they said this game cost us $200 million for putting the game out, marketing it, and doing all that crazy stuff. This game cost us millions upon millions, $200 million to make and put it out. And at this point, we're just losing money on the game because nobody's playing this shit, meaning nobody's buying anything in that game. Nobody's whaling in that game because there's not enough people on it for anybody to whale. So it's like, I understand them not wanting to force people to lose money on games, but I don't know, this might be a blow to the gaming community. That being said, if you're on the Twitch, all you have to do is reload your tab. I am going to play a bit of, what do I want to play? I'm going to play a bit of Marvel Rivals. That's what I want to play. I'm going to play a bit of Marvel Rivals for like the if Twitch, just reload your browser tab.